Okay, everybody, good evening. Welcome to Members Monday number 9. Can you let me know in the chat, as usual, if you can see me and if you can hear me? We had a slight sound issue in the previous stream. So welcome, and it's great to be with you again for our weekly Excel VBA appointment. I've been absolutely loving Members Monday so far, the community, and as I said in the previous stream, I can tell from the way my members are thinking about the problems that you are making progress, that you are getting better at Excel. And I just said in the last stream, Jasvin is with us, and Jasvin had a question. And sometimes the way students ask questions can tell you if they're thinking about something in the right way or in a way that's not wrong, but a way is suboptimal. And Jasvin asked a great question. You can go to the today's public stream towards the end. And then I've been going through the same process with Bart, and Bart, I think, was our first member. I'm not sure if Bart is with us today, but let me know, Bart. And just the question that Bart is asking me, I can tell that Bart is making progress in Excel VBA. So sometimes it's difficult for the learner to know you're making progress, but I guarantee if you turn up every week, if you do the task, you know, yourself to the best of your ability, if you come to the live streams and ask questions, it's impossible for you not to make progress. And there will be hard times, you know, but anything that's worth learning is tough at times. So you can work through those, get support from me, get support from other people in the community. You're going to push your skills forward. So let's see who's in the chat. Jasmine, I've already said is with us. David is with us. David from South Africa, welcome. And Nigel is with us too. Hi, Nigel. How are you? And Bart has just tuned in. Okay, so can you remember at the end of last week's live stream, I set you some homework to do. And the homework was to be able to transfer data from our data input sheet. So we're still working on Bob's file. You can download this file in the link in the video description, by the way, and take the information from our little input mechanism here and to take it onto the data sheet. Now, in the stream, we covered how to do that, but we didn't cover how to find the next available row. You'll remember we got to a situation where we could overwrite the previous entry. Yeah, but that's not quite what we want, is it? We don't want to overwrite the previous entry. We want to build up a database. So we have to understand, how do we get to the next empty row? You know, if the next empty row is 12 rows down, then we need to get to this row. We need a dynamic mechanism. Let me know if you're watching the previous stream, by the way. We need a dynamic mechanism to help us do that. So that was the homework from last time, and I'm going to continue this homework thing. I'm going to try to set you a homework task each week. So I was absolutely pumped when Bart sent me an email today and Bart said homework. So Bart managed to do his homework and he sent the homework in to me. But even better, there's a problem. That's a crazy thing to say. It sounds like a crazy thing to say. Even better, there's a problem that Bart's having, and Bart is getting some kind of error. It's a good thing, because it's a good thing you're getting an error, Bart, because we can work through it now. And I haven't looked at the file yet, not because I'm lazy, although, you know, some people do say I'm lazy. I don't think I'm too bad. Not because I'm lazy, but because it's important for you to see, without sounding too patronizing, it's important for learners to see how to debug. Yeah, that's one of the critical skills in Excel VBA. Are you good at debugging? So this file isn't available for download because I didn't get permission from Bart to share it. But there's an error in this file. And just looking at this, I can... So what's going on here then, Bart? Okay. Yeah, I think I can see the problem here. Okay. So I very much like the idea here, Bart. I very much like the idea. But can anybody in the chat tell me what is wrong with this one? Can anybody in the chat tell me what was wrong? Gerhard, welcome. Gerhard, really good to see you today. And how are you? Good to see you. And Nigel says, hello, everybody here from Wembley. So Nigel, do you live near Wembley Stadium? That would be amazing. Wembley Stadium is the big football or soccer stadium here in the UK. It's where the England team play all of their games. So can we help out Bart here? Bart says I can share the file. I probably won't share the file now, Bart, because it's difficult technically to share the file now. But people can probably see in the code what's going on here. So I think what Bart is trying to do, Bart is trying to get, he's trying to get the next empty cell. So that's a great idea. Work through it step by step, trying to get the next empty cell. And then what you're doing is you're putting the next empty cell into the engine. Okay. And we've already spoken in the previous stream, we spoke about the role of the engine sheet. The engine sheet is where we keep all the information that helps us run the application, but it's information that the user doesn't necessarily need to see. Nigel says it's a problem with the variable name. Okay, so Nigel, are you saying it's a problem with Bart Rowe? Is it because Excel just likes Chris Rowe? Because there's been so many Chris Rows now, Excel just prefers Chris Rowe to Bart Rowe. That's not really the problem, don't worry. What's the problem with the variable? Well, we're saying an integer variable here. That seems fine to me. What's a slight consideration? Just a slight consideration with using an integer variable to count the rows in a database. Let me know in the chat. What's a slight consideration? So something we should bear in mind, a potential problem, if we're using an integer variable to count through a database. Does anybody know? I'm going to type this in here, slight issue. Does anybody know? This is a good one. How good are you with your variables? So we've got two variables here. We've got a range variable. We've got integer variables, string variables. We use Boolean variables. I use just true or false variables. And then we've got other variables, but I don't want to give you anything else here. So Gerhard saying dim Chris Rowe, and later he names it Bart Rowe. Okay. No, I can see we've got Chris Cell. So that's fine. Chris Cell is Chris Cell. That looks fine. Then we've got Bart Rowe, and Bart Rowe is Bart Rowe here. So I can't see any problems with the variables. Okay, because we've got Chris Cell here, Chris Cell. Okay, I can't see any problems with the variables personally. Okay, let's just get through this issue with the integer. So this will work up to approximately 34,000. Okay. So you're probably saying to me, but Chris, I'm never going to have 34,000 rows. Well, it depends how your Excel VBA career goes. As your career progresses, you'll find yourself working with bigger and bigger data sets. And I have, a couple of years ago anyway, I had a client in Forex, so foreign exchange trading. We had data sets with 300,000, 500,000 rows or more in. And that's the only project I've done where Excel's data capacity, what was a problem, it was becoming problematic there. Okay, but the integer variable works up to about 34,000. It doesn't store bigger numbers. It might be 32,000. It's somewhere around there. Okay, it doesn't store numbers bigger than that. So it will return an overflow. It will return an overflow error. So for example, Bart Rowe equals 50,000. Now we should just get an overflow error here. F8 key. Okay, overflow. So that Excel is saying the number is too big for the variable. So an integer variable takes like 1 byte of memory, absolutely nothing. Okay, but that's because it can only store a small number. So what variable should we use then? What variable would guarantee this file would work for more rows than that? Do you know? Okay, let's go ahead. And I'm going to say long here. And by the way, Bart, this isn't the reason your routine isn't working. It's just something I picked up on that I think is important to mention at this point. If you use a long variable here, yeah, Gerhard is there. Excellent, Gerhard. Get to the top of the class, Gerhard. Excellent stuff. So a long variable here. What's going to happen now? Now we're using a long variable. Okay, hit the F8 key. Okay, can you see Excel didn't have a problem with that? That's because we're using a long variable. Long variable is 2 bytes of memory. It's more I'm not absolutely sure about the bytes, by the way, so don't quote me on that, but it uses more memory, more capacity, so it can hold a bigger number. So you might be saying to me, well, Chris, why don't we just use long variables all the time? Because long variables are bigger, they're slightly less efficient. So if you use an integer variable for a small number, that means Excel's memory will be organized with maximum efficiency. Okay, so we're really getting onto high level issues here, but if you have a long and complicated routine working with multiple files, it might be, you would be able to tell the difference. That might make a 10-20% difference. And if you have a very long routine, I have a routine at the moment that I'm just working on with a customer in sports trading. It takes an hour and a half. This routine takes an hour and a half to run. Okay, so I'm thinking about efficiency a lot at the moment. How can we speed up code? And this is one way you can do it, making sure you've got the right variables in the right places. That particular client, by the way, has another laptop and just sets the code running on a different laptop. So the client isn't actually concerned about the amount of time. I am concerned about the amount of time, but that customer, what we've done is so powerful. He doesn't mind just running the routine on another laptop. He's actually really happy with it. So just a kind of side note there about variables. So I'm going to keep the long variable here. Okay, so I still don't know what's wrong with this. So you're going to watch me debug this live. So what do we do when we debug? Firstly, make sure you have the setup where you can see the VBA editor and you can see the sheet at the same time. Let me know in the chat, can you do this? Okay, if you can't do this, then it's going to be a big limitation for you. Okay, I recommend 2 screens. Yeah, I've got 3 screens set up today. Or make sure you can do this. Okay, hold down the Windows key, or do the Apple equivalent. Hold down the Windows key, and the left arrow will move this over to the left. Okay, there we go. So make sure you can do that. So Gerhard says, yes, I can. That's one of the practical skills that people kind of struggle with, but just by learning to do that can make code so much easier. Okay, I'm going to hit the F8 key now. So what are we expecting to happen? So on the engine sheet, I'm going to go across the engine sheet in H2. Okay, row count. So I like this, Bart, because I don't think I did this, but you're storing some information in the engine sheet, and you've labeled it. You've labeled it. Okay, so on my files, the engine sheet is really well organized. I'd love to be able to show you one, but I can't because it's all client confidential. But the engine sheet, well, it looks like this. Yeah, it looks like this. So we have labels, kind of titles at the top. Data's well organized. You don't need any sophisticated formatting on the engine sheet, but just simple formatting is going to keep the data understandable, but just keeping everything organized. So I like the way Bart has said row counter. That means when you come back to the project, you're going to be able to remember what's going on. Okay, Chris, I also got an error on the code you made in session 8. Right, let's see what's going on here. So hitting the F8 key here. So I'm expecting a value to appear in H2, or we might get an error. And I'm looking at this code. I think we are going to get an error here. Yep. Okay. Counting the row that are in the data sheet. Yes. Okay. So I think what you're trying to do, Bart, I think you're trying to start here and you're trying to go to the next empty row, effectively. You're trying to go to the next empty row. So for example, if we had one entry in there, you want to go to row 7. Okay. And that's going to allow you to do the positioning. Yeah. And that was going to be this topic of this live stream anyway. So let me know, Bart, if that makes sense. So the way to do that. Now this is a little bit tricky. Okay. Because what I want you to do, okay, is when we're working with Excel down, okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete this part. I'm just going to put 1 in there just to avoid the error. So when we're working with .end Excel down, you can simulate .end Excel down with your keyboard by holding down Control and hitting the down cursor. Okay, so hold down Control, hit the down cursor. Yeah, I'm going to do that now. I've got to the bottom of the spreadsheet. Okay, so that's what Excel is doing when it's doing the Excel down thing. You know, Excel is holding down the control key and hitting the down cursor. It has exactly the same effect. So we've got a problem. If this is the situation and we've got some data in the first row of the database, then we're going to be okay. So select row 5 now and just do control and down, and you can see we've got to that cell. But if we don't have anything in this cell and we do control and down, we're going to get to the end of the spreadsheet. So that's problematic. Okay, so what's the logic to allow us to deal with this? Bart says yes. Thank you, Bart. What's the logic to allow us to deal with this? And this is the mechanism I've literally used it last week. So I use this all the time. So we're going to say to Excel, if the first cell in the database, use conditional statement here. If, okay, what sheet are we on here? Okay, we're on Chris data. Right, so I'd say if sheets, Chris, there's no underscore there, Chris data. Why is that important? It's important because this code will start from a different sheet. Yeah, when we start this code, we're going to be on the input mechanism sheet. Okay, so we have to make sure we're explicit about the sheet name that we want Excel to work with. Otherwise, Excel is just going to work with the active sheet. Yeah, and that could get us in all kinds of problems. So range, so E6 here. Let's say E6. Now you could argue E input start. Okay, this is the kind of row where the kind of cell that I would use a named range. Why would you use a named range for this cell? Because it's an important cell. It's an anchor cell. It's a cell at the beginning of a data set. Yeah. We're likely to want to do a lot of coding with this cell. Okay, so we don't do it with all cells, we just do it with a selection of important cells. In a typical file, I might have 10, 15, 20 named ranges. So that gives you a sense. What's our naming convention? Can you remember? Let me know in the chat. What's a good naming convention and what's the Tiger in-house naming convention? So we say D, which is the first letter of the name of the sheet. Okay, so I'm going to say D for data, and then underscore, let's say D data start, something like that. Okay, and you can see I'm using the shorthand or the shortcut way of creating a named range using the name box in the top left hand corner. Make sure you hit enter now. If you don't hit enter now, Excel won't understand it as a named range. So I'm going to hit enter. How can I understand that's worked? Select the cell, and I can see in the top left hand corner now it says D data start. Okay, that's the quick way of creating a named range. Alt MN, that's Alt MN, will get you to the name manager, and in the name manager you can see the named range in there. You can also edit the named range, even delete it if you would want to do that. You can also get to the name manager by saying formulas and name manager. Okay, so D data start is here. How best to do this? Yeah, I'm actually going to change that reference. Data start, so Alt MM. I'm going to actually use the row 5. Use row 5. So good practice, editing, changing the range of a named range. Go to edit here. Make sure D data start is selected. Go to edit. And then change this to E5. There we go, hit OK and close this. So now you see in the top left it says E6. That's because E6 is not a named range anymore because we've just changed the reference in the name manager. If I select D data start, I can now see that this is a named range. Okay, so just some points there on dealing with named ranges. So we're going to say range D data start. Data start. Okay, and then we say does not equal nothing. Okay, interesting. Then we say else and end if. So when we begin the conditional statement, we set up the structure of the conditional statement. We complete all of the syntax at the beginning. Yeah, it's the same when we do a loop. When we when we open a loop, we close a loop at the same time. This is good practice. It means you won't forget to do it later. Okay. So you might say to me, okay, Chris, but why did you say does not equal nothing? Why didn't you just say equals nothing? Well, if this said equals nothing, then equals nothing, then what's going to happen here? Okay. Then it means that Excel is going to go to the second part of the conditional statement most of the time. Yeah. This is kind of, how would you say, an exceptional situation for there. Not, okay, I've missed something essential here. Sorry. Offset 1, 0. Apologies for that. That was an essential piece I missed. So we're saying to Excel, look at this cell here. Yeah, because we've used offset. So 1 row down, 0 columns across. So we do it this way because it means most of the time now, we're going to have an entry in this cell. Okay, for standard usage, there's going to be an entry in this cell. So it means most of the time VBA is going to go to the first area. Okay. If we had it the other way around, VBA would go to the second area most of the time. That's marginally less efficient. Okay, marginally less efficient for VBA to have to go to the second part of the conditional statement than to go to the first part of the conditional statement. Okay, and again, this won't make any difference if you're, in kind of amateur usage, playing with the code. I do a lot of my own little files that I develop, the chess file being one of them. So I'm certainly not being patronizing about that. I do that myself. You probably won't know the difference, but if you get to professional level, this kind of thing can just make, 5% difference here and there. It helps make things a bit smoother. So that's why I set it up like this, because most of the time Excel is now going to work with the first part of the conditional statement, and that is marginally more efficient than working with the second part of the conditional statement. Okay, Bart says, I really forgot to do the if statement when I start with the first entry. That's it. That's it, Bart. That's your problem, okay? So Bart, because he didn't do this, was actually going to the bottom of the database, I think. The bottom of the worksheet, rather, most of the time, okay? I think that's one of the problems with your code, Bart. But this will clear up all the problems, don't worry. Okay, so if there isn't anything in there, so if there is something in there, so what's the logic in there? So let's say if there's nothing in the first row, logically, what do we want to do here? Just have a little stretch here. If there's nothing in the first row, then logically, what do we want to do? How are we going to configure Bart row if there's nothing in the first row? Remember, Bart row helps us to position the data. Yeah, when we input the data, Bart row is going to help us do the positioning. Okay, and for the way I'm doing it, Bart, I'm not going to use the engine sheet for this one. I'm just going to store the information in a variable. Okay, and I don't think we're going to need this either. Good. So of course, everyone else listening, you can put this mechanism into the file the file that I've made available. I'm using Bart's file, but it's pretty much exactly the same as the file that you'll be using. Right, so what's the logic here? So if there's nothing in this cell, if this is the situation, then Bart row equals 6, of course. Okay. We could marginally improve that by saying this. A marginal improvement. And anybody who can answer this, I'll be very impressed. You can get to the top of the class if you know this. What's the advantage of this as opposed to just saying Bart row equals 6? Okay, so my argument is the second line is better from a programming perspective. Why is the second line better than the first line? The first line is more efficient, yeah? Just a single character this side of the equals sign. But this one, gives us more possibilities later. Well, why is that? Let me know in the chat. Do you have any ideas there? We've already spoken about named ranges. Why do we use named ranges? What do named ranges allow us to do? Let me know in the chat. Any ideas there? Bart says it's more safe to use. Yeah, I think you mean safe there, Bart. I think you mean safe. So is it safer to use? Yeah. Yeah. Gerhard says it's more dynamic. That's true, Gerhard. Very good. Bart says, and better to build on. Good. Yeah. So this line of code will still work if we move the database somewhere else. Okay. That's true. Nigel says it's stating the sheet name, so less chance of error. Yep. Yep. I like that, Nigel. It's certainly good practice to state the sheet name. In this case, yeah, it's significant because if we were to move this database somewhere else, this line of code is still going to work. Okay, so this line of code is saying, go to the dDataStart named range, go to the DataStart named range, and then use the row number that's one cell below. Okay, so we could move this named range, we could move anywhere. That could be anywhere in the workbook. Maybe we want to move it to anywhere on that worksheet. So that could be anywhere on that sheet. If we want to put rows in above, which happens, that often happens to me. You know, I'll set up some kind of data set like this, and then I think, oh, I want to put some information at the top of the sheet. Maybe you want to put some instructions at the top of the sheet. Maybe you want to put the client logo at the top of the sheet. You might be integrating a navigation system across all the sheets. So good planning avoids that generally, but it does happen. So in that case, we'd be able to just put some rows in, and as we put rows in, yeah, that dDataStart is going to move down. Okay, and we can see dDataStart has now moved down. Let's just remove those rows. Okay, there we go. So that's a slight advantage there. Okay, but today, I don't know what's up with me today. I'm talking about maximum efficiency. These are kind of professional level coding issues. Okay, but I've got high expectations of my students. And, you know, I've been very heartened by what I've seen in Members Monday so far. You know, everyone's having a really good attitude to learning. I've seen some real good improvements so far. So I'm telling you, you know, this is how a professional coder would think about it. It's going to help you make those 1% improvements. That's going to help you fulfill your potential as a coder. Okay, so let's see what happens now. So if we run this code, which part of the conditional statement are we going to go to? Which part of the conditional statement are we going to go to? So I'm going to hit the F8 key now. You can see we go to the second part of the conditional statement. Now, what value are we going to get into the variable now? What value are we going to get into this variable? Anybody let me know in the chat. This is a single character answer. Bart says E6. Almost Bart. You've got the answer there. Because we're using .row here, yeah. Can you see what's going to happen? We're using .row, not .address. We're using .row. So we're just going to have the number. The number is going to go into the variable. Let's prove that. Hit the F8 key, and we can see 6 has gone into the variable there. Okay, super powerful stuff. I know we're working through this very slowly, but these mechanisms are so powerful. You know, I don't use anything more complicated than this on my VBA projects. This is dynamic coding. This is about as powerful as it gets. And with this, you know, I was going to say you can do anything in Excel, but you can certainly you can do almost anything. You can certainly do things that would massively exceed most people's expectations of Excel. And that's the way to do it modestly. Yes, Jasmine's absolutely right. If we were using .address, we would get E6. That's absolutely right. So we could use the address property. Okay, I'm going to ask another difficult question. Sorry, I'm going very slowly, but this is good. We're working at a good level here. What's going to happen now? Why is this going to create an error? And this is another, what I would call an 80+ question if I was in a university situation. I'd call this an 80+ question because it's a question that students who get first-class degrees might, well, I didn't get one, but they might like thinking about. Jasmine says type it at the top. Okay. This is going to create an error. Can you see why this is going to create an error? So this variable is a numeric variable, a long variable. It's waiting for a number. If we try to put a cell address in, which is a combination, alphanumeric, of course, a combination of letters and numbers, I don't think Excel's going to like that. So hitting the F8 key, and we can see we get the most informative error message that Excel gives us. Okay. Bart says the code would like to give address name. Yeah, I think you're on the right track there, Bart. Yeah, VBA error messages. Some of them really give us no idea. This one gives us some idea what's wrong. Type mismatch. So it's saying the data you're trying to put into the variable is not the correct type. In this case, we have a numeric variable, a long variable. We're trying to put alphanumeric information into it. We're trying to put A6 into it. Excel saying that variable is not designed for storing that information. Okay. Imagine if it did actually say this variable does not store that information. Why can't it just say that? Some nice literal error messages. So that's why we get type mismatch. And that's why we should put a row in here. Okay. So we're happy with this part of the conditional statement. So what about the code for Jasmine says, yeah, that's a wish. Indeed, it's a wish. Some more informative error messages in Excel. You know, that would be nice, but you know, there's lots of people online who like to complain about Excel, and I just think the power it gives you massively outweighs any of the annoying inconveniences. You know, it would be like being given a Ferrari and then complaining about the color of the seats, or being given a Ferrari and, you know, complaining about you know, the music that's on the stereo. You know, it's that minor compared to the awesome functionality that you get. So it really doesn't bother me, that kind of thing. Anyway, it's something to be aware of. Okay, has anybody got a Ferrari in Members Monday? Let's think about this. Okay, so what's the code going to be here? Let's suppose we have one entry here. I'm just going to drag this across to give a sense of there being an entry there. So now we want the dynamic function. If we have multiple entries here, we want Excel to get to the next cell that is empty. The next cell that is empty. If you're watching the previous stream, the public stream, then you'll know how to do this. So here we have the name of the variable again. Stop the video now if you're catching up and you don't want to know the answer. Stop the video or let me know in the chat. And we're going to say Chris data range D data start. Okay, let's stop that. In the chat, Gerhard says sheets Chris data dot offset. Okay, we won't be using offset here, Gerhard. We won't be using offset here because in this case, we don't just want to offset down a single row. We don't want to do that. We want to get to the next empty row. Okay, so even if there's 10 or 12 entries, we want to get to the next empty row. Okay, if we use offset will just take us one row down every time, so it won't be dynamic. It won't change or adapt to a different size of database effectively. David said range times 3. Not quite. Can you remember in the last stream? Let's say dot end Excel down here. Okay, and then again we need the row property there. Yeah. Okay, so what's going to happen now? So if we run the code now, I'm going to use the F8 key. Okay, Bart said I didn't use offset because I was thinking it would give a problem in the dot cell. Yeah, I don't think we need offset for this one. Let's have a look. We haven't used offset so far. Oh, we've used Bart's used offset here. Okay, maybe we'll go and have a look at that in a second. But I just want to talk about this. This is I don't know. I always thought somehow of creating, I don't know quite how to say it, but it's like a collection of building blocks for Excel VBA. A collection of building blocks to be able to succeed with Excel VBA. Yeah. One of them is range, range, range. This is a construct that I use very often when I'm working with data sets to get the next empty row. Okay, and this is pretty much foolproof as long as the data doesn't have gaps. It is foolproof. If the data doesn't have gaps, it's going to work. How do we stop the data having gaps? Well, if you have control of the input mechanism, and we do in this file, we can ensure there's no gaps in the data. Yeah, it's bad practice for us to put empty cells into a data set. We can make sure that doesn't happen. So this to me is foolproof. This is in so many of the files that I've built over the years. So what I'm saying is get yourself an Excel file with some modules in the VBA editor and save this construct, because this construct is going to be useful anytime you want to update a data set using Excel VBA. Yeah, and David is right. Yeah, we could use current region if there's no gaps in the data set. We could use current region. Yep, I like that idea. Nigel's right here. I like what Nigel's saying here. So we say plus dot row plus 1. Okay, let's see this in action now. I'm going to hit the F8 key. Okay, what we got here? Yep. Anybody see that? So that error, subscript out of range. Yeah, so we've already covered type mismatch. Runtime error 9, subscript out of range. That usually means there's a spelling error in the sheet name. Quite often, I was going to say 95%, but I'm not sure about the percentages. This usually means there's an error in the sheet, the spelling of the sheet name. The spelling of the sheet name is wrong. And we can see that. So right here, I've put an underscore in here. I usually do put underscores in the sheet names. Okay, so I just removed that. So again, for me, it's totally normal to get errors. I like to have a perfect coding session if that's possible with no errors at all. In reality, you're always going to get errors. So the better you can deal with those, that's another key determinant of how well you're going to do with your coding. So using the F8 key, now we've got a value of 7 in BART row. That's good, because 7 is the next empty row. We're going to use that value down here. Okay, what are we doing down here? Here we're actually transferring the data across. And by the end, this has been quite slow. It's felt slow today, I know, but in the end, you'll see the power of this, because in the end, this whole mechanism is going to work. Bart says, do we need to move the code that you made in the last Members Monday and put it under Bart row? The code from the last Members Monday. Right, I'm probably not going to go to that file. I'm going to make it work with this file, Bart. And I think it's similar. Okay, transfer data. Yep. Transfer data. This is all we need. Okay, so you'll be able to make it work, whichever file you're using. If you got your own file or you downloaded my file, these are the important elements. Okay, so let's put this in here. Okay, and let's say find next empty row here, and then here we're going to say transfer data across. Data across. Okay, and they're the two things we need. Okay, then maybe we'll look at having a message box at the end or something like that. Right. So what about this transferring data across? So we've got a for next loop here. This loop, of course, so range E input starts. Let's just go and look at that range. E input starts. Okay, so I'm just reminding myself what we're doing here. Yeah, we're working through this table. This another mechanism I'm very familiar with. Okay, then, right. Cell offset 02. Yeah, this looks like it's going to work. Okay, so let's have a go with this. I'm going to clear out the data here. Okay, we've got some data in there. Okay, going back to the data sheet here. Okay, Bart says he got an error with this on the with statement. Sheets engine. Looks okay to me. Okay, no, that looks, anyway, it looks okay, but we'll soon find out. Okay, so I'm hitting the F8 key here. Okay, we've got a value in Bart row, so hovering the cursor over the variable to check there's a value in there. Okay, right, there we go. Okay, yeah, I can see the problem here. You see it says .select here at the end, Bart. You see it says .select. So we don't need to say select, of course, because we're looping through these cells. So we can just delete select at the end there. And this should be sufficient. Yeah, that looks reasonable enough to me. Looking at the syntax, okay. I'm just going to go through the other side of the screen here. Okay, hitting the F8 key. Okay, coming in there. Okay, good. Okay, seems to be working. Right, so what's going to happen now? I'm just going to put some values in here. Control-Alt-V. What's going to happen now? So when we run the code now, I'm going to go back to the data sheet, or we will run this code from the input sheet, of course, eventually. So if we run this code now, where is the data going to appear? Where's the data going to appear? If we run the code now, is it going to appear on row 6? That's what we did last week, of course. We just got to the point where we could overwrite the previous entry. Yeah. Now we've got dynamic quality in the code. So I'm just going to go ahead and play the code. So hit the play button or hit the F5 key, and we can see our entries just stacking up there. How cool is that? Okay, Gerhard says E7. Yeah, Gerhard, absolutely right. Yeah. So Gerhard's saying the next entry is going to go in here. So for me, this is one of those moments in Excel VBA learning where you've got to punch the air. You've got to say, yes, everything's working, because we have one of these mechanisms now that's just awesomely powerful. Yeah, and I have literally sat at the computer just clicking the button like this and just watching it fill up. I mean, it's just so powerful, this mechanism. It's not just because I like watching screens full of my surname, by the way. I don't recommend that. I don't think I'm that bad. But you can see the power there. Okay, let's just change some entries here. Put my dog's name in. Control-Alt-V. Okay, then run the code again. Back to the data sheet. Run the code again. Good, hit the F5 key, and we can see those entries coming in. Super, yeah. So yeah, Gerhard really summed up really well. Powerful and short VBA. Powerful and short. Bart says fantastic, really nice. I feel the VBA addiction kicking in. That's what I want to do with Members Monday. I want to create some positive addictions. And yeah, if you get addicted to Excel VBA, you know, that's only going to be a good thing. But the point I'm trying to make, I suppose, is Excel VBA learning. It's not steady. Yeah, it's not linear. It's like you have long sessions of making no progress. You know, we had 45 minutes today. 45 minutes today where I was just playing with the syntax. But I wanted to do it. You know, we only did like 5 lines of code, you know, and we only did only 2 proper lines of code. So you're probably thinking, oh, this is boring. Yeah. But it's because I know how powerful these constructs are. Yeah. And I knew after 45 minutes of just work, we'd get to a real sense of achievement. And that's what it's like with VBA. You don't get a little sense of achievement every 5 minutes. Sometimes you'll be working for 3 hours and then it all comes together. You get the synergy, and that's why I think I am addicted to Excel VBA. Good. Nigel said, I've also done that when I started learning VBA and I'm a real novice. Yeah. I think we will need something to stop duplicating records. That's a great, that's a great point, Nigel. I think we've definitely duplicated some records here. That might be a good topic for next week, how to avoid duplication of records. I mean, with all of these, well, let me tell you something. I actually like, I've got a confession to make. I actually like chess. Yeah. And I actually follow chess. And there's lots of, there's all kinds of things on YouTube these days. And I watch interviews with the world chess champion, who knows the name of the world chess champion. He's called Magnus Carlsen. And he talks about the way he thinks about things. And he says when he thinks about a problem, he'll start thinking about it, which is what we just did, because I said, let's think about how to avoid duplicate entries. He'll start thinking about it, but he knows he won't get the solution straight away. So he just starts thinking about it and then just stops thinking about it. And it kind of ticks away in the back of your head. Yeah, subconsciously, you're thinking about something. He's with him, it's chess positions. With me, it's VBA, and it's how to set up files for customers. Okay. So once you know how VBA works, you get a sense of how VBA applications work. You get a sense of how to set them up. You'll be able to do that. And it's what I do. At any given time, I think about 3 or 4 different client problems, but they're kind of ticking over in the back of my head. Okay. So that's something for us to think about for next week. And, next week, I'm happy to carry on working with this file. But maybe we carry on. Maybe we can think about doing something else. I mean, if we're going to stop duplicate entries, then, well, we're going to have to give each entry some kind of identification. Give each entry some kind of identification number, for example. Or we could check through and check against the last name and the first name, for example. That would be another way to do the validation. Okay. So that's a possible thing for us to look at. And let me know. Yeah, let me know in the chat what else you'd like to do with this file. We're able to build up a little database now. Another thing you might want to do is clear the database as well. I mean, that could be our homework task. Yeah, that could be our homework task, actually. Yeah, okay, homework task, homework. Okay, always write homework on the board, they say. So homework. Create a routine, a dynamic routine to clear the data in the database. Okay, and then for additional credit, get the customer to confirm they want to delete the database. To, let's say, clear the data. Okay, what do you think about that? So that's another one, you might want to start thinking about. But if you, I don't know what, let me know in the chat what other people want to do next week. We could look at these 2 questions, for example, but for your homework, So create a dynamic routine to clear the data in the database. Okay. So if you combine this stream with today's public live stream, so we had a live stream that started at 4 o'clock today. If you combine those 2 together, you're definitely going to be able to answer this one. Okay. And remember, it's all about the client interaction. So deleting a data set is one of those, that's quite a big deal, isn't it? Deleting a data set. it's something you don't want your customer to do that accidentally. So it would be sensible to get confirmation from your customer. That little box that flashes up saying, are you sure you want to do this? Also for your homework, okay, see if you can do that. Right, let me know if there's any final questions in the chat. But as I said, we've gone through some super powerful code there, only a couple of lines of code, but super powerful. And that's what it's like when you're creating powerful VBA applications with experience. You learn what the powerful things are. And there's not many things, not many concepts that you need to know, but combined together effectively, as we've done today. You know, you've felt the power of Excel VBA there. We've got our dynamic mechanism here to find the row. We've got another dynamic mechanism here that's going to allow us to do additional inputs. And this really is professional level coding. I wouldn't be doing much more than this in my Excel VBA applications. Okay, yeah, Jasmine says 2 message boxes minimum. Yeah, you might want to say confirm and then, are you sure? Are you sure you want to confirm? David says, can you upload the file? Yes, I will upload the file after the stream, and I'll put a link in the description saying download end file. I'll upload this file and you can you'll be able to go through it at your leisure. Nigel says default them to no as well. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let's put that on the homework. Default to no. Okay, I'm not sure about that one, Nigel. How would you get a message box to default to no? Is that the default for message boxes? I'm not sure. Good one. Justin says, are you really sure? That's 3 message boxes, I think. And David says, thanks. Okay, good. So thanks very much, everybody. And as I said, you're very welcome to shoot me an email, info@tigersolutions.co.uk. Leave a comment below this video or below any of the other members' videos. There's a mechanism on YouTube to prioritize the member comments. So I always read the member comments first. But let me know what you'd like to cover. You know, we did some work on Bart's file first. We've done some work on Bob's file now. And I'm happy to introduce another file. If somebody has got a file that they want me to look at, I'm certainly happy to consider that. Bart says, can we also look at the selection button in the Chris data sheet on the top? Chris data sheet on the top. Look at the selection button. The selection button. Do you mean these buttons here, Bart? Bart, yeah, maybe you mean these buttons here. Yeah, so these buttons are part of a custom navigation system, so we could look at the custom navigation system as well. Anyway, yeah, let me know via email, Bart, if that's what you'd like to look at. And yes, I think Bart's talking about this. Yeah, so we could look at custom navigation next week as well. So custom navigation means you use the tabs to navigate rather than using the usual tabs at the bottom of the screen. It can look super slick and professional, a real wow factor. So we could look at that. Okay, everybody. So thank you so much for supporting me, supporting the channel, and very happy to help you out with Members Monday. And take care, guys. I will see you next week. Take care.